Hello everybody and welcome to another fun-filled episode of the Nonsense Retrospective. I'm Rick as always, and equally as always joining me is my co-host Evan.
Hi diddly ho, neighborino!
And if that's not clued you in a little bit, we're going to be talking about The Simpsons today. But before we get onto that, let's get into our time-honoured opening segment of the Nonsense Asinine Hypotheticals.
Now, this might be fun, it might be boring, who knows? The question is thus. As we know, Simpsons is now owned by our almighty Lord and Saviour Disney, and they've already given us a few interesting crossovers, shall we say. I've not watched them, but, you know, they're interesting enough concepts. So my question is an easy one. You're allowed to have anything crossover with The Simpsons that hasn't already had a crossover. What do you pick?
Ooh.
Alternatively, what would you want to see them parody? Like, I'll accept either answer.
Kind of want a full-on South Park crossover.
Okay.
Because they did these Family Guy crossover and let Family Guy animate it, because it was all done by Fox. I would kind of like to see them do a bit of back and forth with South Park, because when they did it with Family Guy, they were allowed to ramp up to Family Guy levels of violence.
Because it was a Family Guy episode, it wasn't a Simpsons one.
Totally. It was a Family Guy episode that took place in Springfield. Similarly, with South Park, they could make it more adult.
I mean, they've kind of had unofficial crossovers with South Park before, mostly because South Park takes a piss out of what they want and fuck the consequences.
Totally.
Like, I think one of my favourite South Park jokes is Simpsons did it.
Yeah.
And by the end of the episode, when Bart is just like, Simpsons did it, and Mr. Garrison just goes, Simpsons has been around for like 70 fucking years, it's done everything, who cares?
Yeah, that was the one where Butters was being Professor Chaos and decided to put... he took the fillings out of chocolates and replaced it with mayonnaise. And then at the end of the episode, Bart did the same thing on The Simpsons.
Oh, yeah, I distinctly remember that gag. It was a good one. It was fun. It was a good-natured rib on The Simpsons as opposed to the... You know, a lot of people take the piss out of The Simpsons and it's just mean-spirited nowadays.
Yeah. But yeah, the one I've got for you, it's a bit meandery, unfortunately, but here we go. In the vein of Jumanji, you can make a feature-length movie out of some tabletop game. So, as Jumanji didn't exactly exist, they had all the control they liked over what the tabletop game itself was. But what would you make out of a tabletop game movie?
See, I find it very interesting how our questions are remarkably similar today. This type of question, it excites me. It gives my brain a chance to work. Question is, what movie would I want to see, or rather, what board game would I want to see made into a movie? I'll tell you what, I don't know if it's technically a board game, but do you remember Screwball Scramble?
I do. That would be a really good one, actually.
You had to get the marble all the way through the really stupid fucking puzzle type things.
Yeah, there was a sequel to that.
How can you have a sequel to that?
It was a separate course.
So it wasn't a sequel so much as the same game, different version?
Yeah, the idea was it was made like 25 years later, and with a little bit of jiggery-pokery, you could go straight from stage 1 to stage 2.
I'm not gonna lie, that's cool. But if I was making a movie out of this, I'd make it sort of like in the vein of the Saw franchise.
Okay.
Instead of a ball, it's a human. And they've got to go through all these sort of physical trials. And instead of having a ball being the controller thing, have a giant massive boulder in the vein of Indiana Jones just slowly going downhill sort of behind chasing. And if they can't get out in time, they get squished. And it's like really fucking thriller-esque. Like, oh, are they going to make it? Of course they're going to make it. It's probably a kid's film. But you know.
So the screwball is metaphorical in this case.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I really like that.
That's what I'd do, but that's mostly because my brain was like, let's think of a fucking board game. Like, you can't do Jenga, that you might upset people. You couldn't really do Buckaroo, that's just animal cruelty. You can't do Operation, that'd be a bit boring. It's just like, why the fuck has this guy got fucking literally an oil can in his elbow?
Yeah.
You can't do Mousetrap, there's already technically a Mousetrap film, even though it's got nothing to do with a goddamn board game.
Oh yeah, totally.
Had Lee Evans in it, if I recall.
It might have actually, I forget. I generally remember the Mousetrap movie being like, they're trying to vacate a mouse from a house so they can sell it, and eventually they do, and it turns out the mouse's soul was the only thing keeping the house together, and it collapses.
I don't remember that part of that film. Maybe we're thinking of two different films that both have the name Mousetrap.
I mean, it wasn't the mouse's soul. The mouse was doing things around the house that was keeping it together.
How? Explain!
I know, right? I think he just enjoyed being in the house, and yeah.
This is my home. I must properly maintain it.
Yeah.
Fuck, charge the fucker rent. There you go. That's your problem solved.
As far as I'm aware, they didn't even kill the mouse. They just got him out of the house.
Again, it was probably a kid's film, and killing the mouse would upset the children.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we've meandered long enough, don't you?
Yeah. So as we have alluded to before, today we're having an entire episode of Member Berries based on The Simpsons. And on my cue card, I've opened it up. It was intentionally meant to be... The Simpsons.
Yeah, except I'm the fucking dumb prick who reads it, so I didn't read it like that. How did I read it, Rick?
What I've actually written is The Simpsons. But yeah, we normally open up with our previous experience, and for me, I first got into The Simpsons in early to mid-90s. By that point, it was already a kind of old show. It was in the very powerful swing of good Simpsons, and the way that I got introduced to it was by some VHS tapes from the local rental store. Not Blockbuster, but, you know, that kind of place. And shortly after, it did start airing on BBC Two, but by that token, the first episodes I got were all season 1 ones that were cherry-picked for being good ones. So it was either Bart the General or Bart the Genius as the first one I ever saw, but I do know that the second episode on BBC Two was Bart the Daredevil, the Captain Lance Murdoch episode.
Is that the one where he tries to jump the gorge?
Yeah, Homer ends up doing it on his behalf.
The thing I love about that episode is at some point down the line they do a behind-the-scenes type thing where they act as if all the characters in The Simpsons are just actors. They have an interview with Homer, a sit-down interview, and Homer just goes, yeah, originally it was meant to be Bart jumping the gorge, but they thought it'd be funnier if I did it.
Yeah. I think that's the bit where they also allude to Homer having a pain pill addiction.
Oh, yeah, something like that. It got really dark.
Yeah, that was one where it was hosted by Troy McClure as well.
Yeah. Do we want to talk about that now and get it out of the way?
Yeah, Troy McClure's voice actor passed away, and that's basically the transition from good Simpsons into the future thereof.
Like, I didn't actually know the story. Like, we're not going to repeat the story because it's fucked up, but you can easily look it up if you so wish. But I remember there was one point where we were talking about The Simpsons, and I went, man, whatever happened to Troy McClure? That character was awesome, and you told me the details of what happened to the actor, and I was just like, fucking hell.
If you don't want to feel the big sad, don't go on a Google flu. Can you remember what your first episode was?
I'll be real with you, Rick. No, I can't. My early memory of The Simpsons was when I started watching it was available on TV quite readily. We were lucky enough to eventually have access to Sky One. I don't know how. I think we were one of those families that stole a box. Like, that was fucking nearly 30 years ago. I don't think they give a shit now. It was like a weekly tradition where my dad, me and my brother would sit down at 7 o'clock on a Sunday to watch the brand new Simpsons. That's the time period we're talking about. There was no internet in that days. You wanted to watch The Simpsons, you had to be on a fucking schedule.
Yep. You had to be on Sky's schedule, which for everyone outside of the UK is Fox's schedule. Part of Disney buying Fox is the fact that they got pretty much all of their entertainment branch. I think the only thing they didn't get from the entertainment branch was Fox News because they wanted to keep that for themselves.
Yeah, because Murdoch's a
Oh, yeah. And the infrastructure generally got sold off, so our Sky infrastructure is now owned by Comcast.
They kept sports as well.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Like Fox Sports, like, you'd be a fucking madman to sell that.
Yeah, I should know about that because my cousin works for them.
Well, fair enough then. That's an interesting tale, I assume.
She did her media degree dissertation as a series of interviews with ex-footballers.
By footballers, you mean our footballers, or do you mean American footballers?
Our footballers. And Sky took that as a job interview, and they gave her a position. Although she has done things that are not Sky Sports, but the one that she keeps coming back to is Sky Sports.
Oh, man, fair fucks to her. That sounds like an actual tough industry to break into.
Oh, it absolutely is.
And her interviews were deemed so good that, yeah, we will allow you into the circle.
Yeah. The only downside is she's competing with Kirsty Gallagher, who is a bit of a titan.
I don't do sports stuff. That name actually means nothing to me, Rick.
The well-known female sports commentator on Sky.
Okay, is she actually good at her job, or is it just because she's got big tits? I generally don't know.
Combination of both.
If you're good at your job, then it doesn't matter how big your tits are.
Oh, man, that's one for the marquee.
You know what I mean, though, right? Like, there are some people who clearly have their job because they look pretty. This applies to men as well.
Yeah, it's the reason that a lot of face wrestlers are faces, because, you know, face is short for babyface.
Back in the day, yes, less so now.
Back to The Simpsons. The characterization was very different in early seasons. We had Flanders actually being a piece of shit to Homer, and being the neighbor that Homer needed to keep up with the Joneses with. Like, early on, there was the Call of the Wild episode where they get the RV, because Flanders has a really cool RV, so Homer goes, goes, oh, we need an RV. They go and try and buy one, including its own satellite, and the guy tells him, you couldn't afford this if you lived to be 1,000,000, so they end up buying the rundown, shitty one.
At the moment, for some reason, I'm just getting a fucking massive flash in my brain of, Lay Grill, what the hell is that?
But yeah, this was another one of those episodes where all the characters actually got something to do. Like, even Maggie got to pal up to the bears in that one. I think that was also the one where Homer became a Bigfoot.
I was going to say, do you remember that shit? He got covered in mud and people got confused.
Yeah, that would be an entire episode these days.
Yeah.
And back then it was a B-plot.
Dude, like, seeing as we're still on the really early days of Simpsons, I gotta ask, what's your opinion on Black Smithers?
I didn't mind it when I saw it. I just accepted it because it was the first time I saw Smithers. I understand that it is problematic to have a servile character like that just be a black guy. I understand changing it. What I don't like is that they essentially just erased a character's identity just for the sake of convenience.
Oh, don't worry. Nowadays, instead of being a two-dimensional character whose defining characteristic is servile and black, his now new character is being servile and gay, which, as we know, is much better.
Oh yeah, totally.
Dude, do you remember that fucked up episode where we got a glimpse into the future and Smithers had two really attractive, at least by Simpson standards, girls on his arms? And Bart just goes, hey, I thought you were. Not anymore. I got this shot that cures me.
Yep.
That did not fucking age well, did it?
No, it didn't.
Jesus.
But yeah, there's other things that showed up in early seasons. Like, there was an overarching thing of The Simpsons itself was aimed at popular culture. So the idea was it was the underdog with a capital U trying to take the piss out of things that were popular and also things that were accepted and acceptable by being more real about them. Like, it was one of the only series where it showed a family in poverty actually dealing with it. You talked about Black Smithers, but in that very same episode, that's the one where Homer loses his job, spends the entire episode unemployed, and his turning point is when he attempts suicide.
Dude, I don't have any recollection of this.
Yeah, it's the one where he gets the safety inspector job.
I don't remember that. I thought he got the safety inspector job because everyone was protesting that there wasn't enough safety.
Yeah, the whole point is, when he goes to kill himself, he nearly gets run over, and he goes, that's dangerous. There should be a sign there. Wait a minute. There should be a sign there. And that's when he starts protesting.
I thought he nearly got run over specifically by Patty and Selma because they're dicks.
No.
Is there another episode where Patty and Selma try and murder him with their car then, and I'm just getting the two conflated?
You might be thinking of the episode where he has to borrow a load of money from them.
No, that's a different one.
Yeah, fair enough.
No, I remember that one because at the end of it, he saves one of their lives, and they go, Homer, oh, how can we ever repay you? And he goes, forgive the debt? Well, we can't. Yeah, woohoo!
Yeah, call off the debt, dead stuff, let's go, Marge. And the episode just ends. But yeah, like, even Marge had her own, like, she was keeping the family together by a thread based entirely on the fact that she was the only one that could. And this is something that persists. I think it's one of the only things that really does persist is that Marge keeps on trying and keeps on keeping the family together. Bart used to be a lot more nuanced in that he was both an underachiever and proud of it, and also troubled by the fact that he was a bit dumb.
Well, there's that really early episode where he tries. It's actually quite a heart-wrenching moment, which was rare for Simpsons back in the day, of he does the remedial test, and it's just him in the room with Edna, and Edna's sitting very patiently, and Bart fills out the thing, and he's super confident. He hands the test to Edna, and she marks it, and she goes, oh, sorry, Bart, you don't quite make it. And he just bursts into tears and goes, but I tried. I really actually tried, and it still wasn't good enough. And if you can't relate to that, then fucking kudos. Good for you. You've lived a pretty good life if that's the case.
A little bit of trivia. I think that's actually the highest rated episode in terms of TV ratings, like the people that watched it, eyes on screen.
Oh, fair enough. Back in the day when that sort of thing mattered.
I also don't know how they actually record this, because apparently they have a set of people that have these like receiver boxes, and it just sees what they're looking at, and then they extrapolate it from that. But it's really weird.
Oh, dude, don't. When I was young, and it used to go, this show got this amount of views, and I was just like, how does it know? How can they know? Because you don't know how many people are inside a household, so they can't just go by this house was watching this at this time. They might have multiple TVs and being watching multiple things. What the fuck? At the end of the day, I think it was either made up or they just guessed.
Both are very in the realm of possibility for TV like that.
Well, because nowadays, if you want to track data like that, they don't actually say how many views it gets. They say, this is how many times it was streamed.
Yeah, because that is something that they can have a metric of. The most interesting one of the family, though, I think, is Lisa, because she's gone through a lot of development. She used to be a piece of shit. I really miss Troll Lisa, like the fact that she could really get on Bart's nerves and actually have it stick rather than him just being able to bash it off as her being a nerd.
Well, remember that entire episode that is literally Lisa conducting an experiment comparing Bart to a gerbil?
Is my brother dumber than a hamster? And then Bart eventually just steals the hamster and puts him in a remote control plane.
Just kind of fucked up in its own way, but yeah.
Can hamsters fly planes? And then Skinner gives it to him because, like, science is like 50% P.T. Barnum.
That's the circus guy, right?
Yeah. The Greatest Snowman. I also didn't know the reference when I first saw the show when I was a kid.
Oh, you wouldn't? For one thing, The Greatest Showman wasn't out back then.
No, it wasn't.
A film I've never seen.
It's alright. It's got a decent soundtrack.
One of the reasons why I don't want to watch it is because I know without even watching the damn thing that it quite clearly glosses over all the horrible shit that bloke did.
Oh, yeah. They try and paint, shall we say, industrious nature of entrepreneurship in a positive light rather than a predatory, penny-pinching, exploitative light.
Let's put it this way, if this guy had access to the Elephant Man, he would beat the shit out of him.
Or at least cockfight him against one of his other freaks, if you'll pardon the expression.
They used to call them freak shows. We're not calling them freaks. That's just what the nature of the naming was back then. And we've learnt now that, hey, that's not cool. But we're still living in a society where people who have differences in sexuality and wants in gender still get fucking treated like arses. So, you know, we're not exactly a utopia yet, people, and we probably never will be, unfortunately. Boy, do I sound like a fucking hippie sometimes.
Yeah, we're of that generation where we're hoping for a better future, and then we're sat at home making a podcast rather than going out and overthrowing the government and what have you.
I'm not a violent person.
No, me either.
It's one of those where I liken my belief system to anarchy. Now, before people fucking go, oh, Joker, blah, 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 I don't fucking mean that. There's a philosophy that is titled anarchy. It's hard to explain in less than bloody 10 minutes. In fact, if I had an whole hour, it'd probably be difficult. Look into it. There's something to it.
And it's very core, like linguistically, it just means without having bosses and leaders.
That's pretty much it, yeah. You throw around the word anarchy and it's associated with characters like the Joker and chaos in general, and it's like, no, that's not the point. I get that it can also mean that, don't get me wrong, I'm not a fucking idiot.
Yeah.
I'm not using it in that sense.
Yeah, there's passive anarchy to just not have a system of rule, and there's active anarchy to take down the current system of rule, and the two are very different.
Anyway, I feel like I've probably derailed us a bit.
Yeah, we talked about anarchy for too long in the Simpsons episode. But yeah, the Simpsons had a couple of other things that they did. They did some OST album songs from the show.
Dude, I told you the other day when you mentioned Do the Bartman, I had it on cassette.
Yep.
That's how old this shit is, people. If you don't know what a cassette is, quickly take 2 seconds to Google it.
It's like a VHS for your car.
Yeah, or your boom box. Actually, I think boom boxes might have had CDs. I don't know. I was never part of that culture.
You're entirely correct. If you look up a boombox, it's probably going to have the cassette in the middle of it, or at least when you draw one.
I've just reminded myself of a great visual Simpsons gag when the old folks got let out of the old folk home for a day, and you had the kid with his boombox, and then opposite them was 2 old people carrying a great big fucking stereophone between them. But yeah, so OSTs.
They also had their original albums, one of which had Do the Bartman on it, which was Simpsons Sing the Blues, and the other one was called the Yellow Album, and these were like the characters singing in character, but singing actual songs that wouldn't have fit in the show quite as easily. One of them was Mr. Burns singing Look at All Those Idiots. However, they also had one where Homer was singing Born Under a Bad Sign, and the guitarist was B.B. King.
That guy's a fucking legend on the guitar.
Yeah, he is.
And they got him to play that shit. Or maybe he was a fan of The Simpsons, we'll never know.
Maybe so. There was apparently a third OST album that were released in like 2007, but that was after the show had started to wind down in terms of production values on individual episodes.
Just a fucking bit.
Yeah. Another thing they did was they made some comics, which I followed these comics for a long time, and I should have realized pretty early on that they were a bit shit. And yeah, they were scaled up from the original American release of being A5 sized to like a full-on A4 massive glossy comic.
I like how you've brought up the comics because for a very long time for Christmas, I'd always get, annuals.
Yeah, annuals.
I used to get religiously the Beano and the Dandy annual. Occasionally, I'd get a magical third annual that I wouldn't know what it was. One year I got Family Guy, that was proper shit. Yeah, I got The Simpsons for a couple of years, and some of the stories that were deemed good enough for the annual were actually pretty good, pretty funny. They were basically just Simpsons episodes, but in print.
Yeah, some of them were alright. right. Some of them were similar to modern episodes.
Oh yeah, shit then.
Yeah. One that I remember was actually pretty good was when Homer semi-adopted a guy off the street who was a homeless guy. It was basically a retool of the Itchy and Scratchy creator episode, but with Duff Beer.
I gotta appreciate that Itchy and Scratchy dude of just like, I'm a simple man, I don't want the world. I just want me, myself, and my solid gold house.
Because, yeah, he got his $800 million and he got his solid gold house, and now he's going back for liver and onions because that's what he's used to.
Dude, the idea of $800 million getting you a solid gold house is laughable nowadays.
I know. I won't even get you a solid gold toilet.
I'll be real with you, you can probably relate, but like, I just want a fucking room to myself.
But yeah, The Simpsons had a lot of good moments and good quotes and even good episodes and good characters. So rather than the usual MVP and favourite moments, we're doing a lot more questions. So do you have a favourite quote?
One line I remember being very, very funny is it's when Duffman's getting smothered for some reason, and he just goes, Duffman can't breathe. That one always sticks with me.
I love the absurdity of the fact that he had to have some air in him to be able to say that, and he used it to say that.
Well, Rick, you came up with the question, so you've probably got a better answer than me. So, what's your favourite quote?
My favourite quote is a Homer quote where Homer doesn't sound like a Homer.
Oh?
And it's when he's impersonating Mr. Burns. Hello, my name is Mr. Burns. I believe you have a letter for me.
Okay, Mr. Burns, what's your first name?
I don't know.
Now, the best part of that...
Great plan, Bart.
I love it as well, because going back to that like behind-the-scenes type of aesthetic they like to do sometimes, there's one with Troy McClure hosting a show, and he goes, now, people have been running to us to say that Homer's been getting dumber and dumber over the years. We'd like to point to this moment from season 3.
See, he was always stupid.
Yeah, it's so fucking great. Like, Bart's got an excuse, he's 10.
Yeah.
Homer's excuse is he's got a crayon stuck in his skull.
Yeah, Bart's excuses are, A, he's 10, and B, he's got the Simpson gene.
Like that fucking doctor lady who goes, actually, the Simpsons gene only affects the Simpsons men.
It's a defective part on the Y chromosome. But yeah, do you have a favourite season?
That's a tough one, because I don't actually know seasons. Anything pre-season 10.
Sure.
I think you'd have to take out the first 2 seasons, because they're still finding their feet. And anything after post-season 10 is like, you'll get the occasional diamond in the rough, but it's mostly awful.
So yeah, I'd probably say around season 5 and 6 is where it really hit its peak in terms of they had good plots, and I think every single one of them were a banger. Like stuff like Homie the Clown and the Sideshow Bob return episodes.
Played by Dr. Fraser Crane, no less.
Yeah, they even got his brother in the Frasier show to be Sideshow Cecil.
I don't know about you, Rick, but I loved Frasier.
Yeah, it's a very good show. It's one of the success stories of how a spin-off can do really well.
Yeah, because they all originally came from Cheers, didn't they?
Yeah, some of the characters in Cheers were very undeveloped as characters in Cheers, so when they transplanted them to Frasier and gave them more backstory and more fleshing out, they just essentially rewrote the character. But that was for the better, because if you put down on paper that a Jungian psychologist versus a Freudian psychologist, you wouldn't think that would make a very good show, and yet here we are. The next question, do you have a favourite episode?
I quite like the swimming pool episode.
Sure.
It's a good episode where Bart ends up breaking his leg, and there's that little throwaway gag where someone else is looking at him through a telescope as he's looking through them, and when he leaves, he's just like, oh no, that little kid's coming to kill me!
Milhouse tries writing his name on Bart's cast, and he ends up writing Millpool.
I also like how the whole reason he breaks his leg is because Nelson goes, hey Bart, your epidermis is showing, and as he's falling to his imminent death, Nelson just goes, you see, epidermis actually means hair, so I'm technically correct.
And it means your skin. But Nelson also technically was correct, but also...
very wrong. Have you got a favourite episode?
Yeah, I would say it's probably Who Shot Mr. Burns Part 1.
Oh, very controversial. Go on.
Yeah, because it's probably the only good two-parter Simpsons episode, because the other two-parter Simpsons episode was recent and it was shit.
I was about to say, I don't remember there being any other two-parters.
The recent two-parter was when Reverend Lovejoy got ousted as the Reverend of Springfield by a new guy, and then the second part was him regaining his mantle.
I know it's The Simpsons, so it would never have gone to that place, but when you said Reverend Lovejoy was ousted, I thought you were going to say as a paedophile.
Even South Park does the thing of their priest is actually a good person who isn't a paedophile, but at least South Park actually addresses paedophilia.
Yeah, because they can.
Yeah.
You can't have an episode of The Simpsons where Bart tells his mum that he got touched by Lovejoy.
No.
They don't appear to be a Catholic church.
No, No, they're not. They even reference that they're specifically not Catholic. I think they're just generic, basic bitch white guy Jesus church.
Pretty much, right? Because they don't lean into any of the things that lead it to believe they're anything else. Like, they're definitely not Protestant, and there's no way they're going to be fucking Church of England.
Well, I think technically anything that's not Catholic and not Orthodox is just generically Protestant. But yeah, the interesting thing about Who Shot Mr. Burns Part 1 is that there was like an entire summer in between where there was actual buzz about the show, that people actually didn't know who had indeed shot Mr. Burns. And to stop it from being leaked by staff, they actually did film 2 endings. We had to see the other one in the same episode we keep referencing, which maybe should have been one of our favourites, where Troy McClure is hosting the behind-the-scenes episode.
I do like the ending of the first episode, where I don't remember if it's Homer or it's another character who just goes, now, who will solve this mystery? Could it be you, or you? And he points straight at the camera, but then it turns around and it's just Chief Wiggum scratching his head going, well, yeah, I'll give it a shot.
It's my job, right? He's a fun character to have, and I think they use him about the right amount as well, which is not very often. Like, if you use certain characters too often, then they become tired. Flanders you can pretty much use as much as you like, because even though he's been Flanderized...
Well, you told me the story once of you saying, oh, that character got Flanderized to your dad, and your dad was just like, I've never heard that word before, but I know what you mean.
Yeah. The reduction in complexity of a character to a single or couple of bullet points is Flanderization.
Well, it's very interesting, isn't it? Because this tends to happen to Simpsons and Simpsons knockoffs at an alarming rate. Because it's happened to Family Guy and American Dad and Cleveland Show and all that shit as well. People won't like it. Even Rick and Morty fucking does it.
Yeah. When your cast gets bigger, your individual characters need an identifying hat to wear.
I'll tell you another good example if you want.
Mm-hmm.
Persona Q.
Yeah.
Which is the big old mismatch of all the... Well, I say all the Persona games. Persona 3 to recently 5. All the characters get stripped down to bare traits, which really sucks because you get Chie, who is a great character, and it's just like, no, meat and sport.
Yep. Yeah. Well, the problem with that is you got a lot of characters who fill the same roles in different teams.
Yeah.
So if you got to make them different, then you got to amplify the thing that is unique about them, which, yeah, for Chie is meat and sport. And the third minor thing is that she wears little boy shorts, so when she does her high kicks, then you don't see panty shots.
Yeah, could you imagine if Yukiko did kicks?
Next question is, do you have a favourite side character?
I'm going to go for the Sea Captain.
Captain McAllister, yeah.
Didn't know he had a name, I've always just called him the Sea Captain.
Yeah, apparently he's got a first name as well, but I can't remember it. I only know that his name is Captain McAllister because Lionel says it to him when he's trying to counter-sue for the all-you-can-eat buffet.
Right, yeah.
Captain McAllister, is it true you're not actually a sea captain? And he just looks really sad and goes, arr.
I'm going to assume it's not canon. It might have happened during a Halloween episode. But there's one thing where he crashes his ship into another ship and they start to sink. And Homer or Marge, I forget who, just goes, how the hell didn't you see that? And he just goes, yar, two glass eyes.
He just dings them both with his pipe.
Oh, it's such a horrible... It makes me fucking actually clench up because it's so disgusting to think about touching your eye like that. But yes, Rick, side characters, there are many to choose from. So who is your favourite?
It might actually be Comic Book Guy, just because of how awful a person he is.
He is a great fucking visual representation of that guy before there was a that guy.
He's a very easily reusable, acceptable target. I think you can list the number of times he's been a good person on like one finger, and it's the middle one.
Yeah, even when he was fucking Seymour's mum, he wasn't really a nice person about it.
No.
Boy, wasn't that a weird episode?
Yeah, it was a weird episode. I think they actually just bond over both being arseholes.
Yeah, that's it. That tends to be how those relationships happen, I suppose.
In the later episode, he's got a Japanese weeaboo girlfriend.
Is it a real one, or is he being catfished?
It's a real one. She's like skinny and cute and weeby, and she does the weeb side and he does like the Western comic side.
So is it actually a romantic thing, or is it just a business relationship?
Oh, it's romantic and they live together and everything.
Well, that's kind of nice. I'd hope that they tone down his dickishness if they want that to be a believable sort of thing to happen.
Yeah, I think they do. They also give him a name at some point.
Oh, fuck that.
Yeah, they reveal his name, just name drop it at some point. Like someone says, wait, is that your name? And you went, yeah, what do you think my name was?
Comic book guy.
And it's just like a really normal name, like Melvin Potato Force or something, I don't know.
A real normal name, Rick.
Yeah, I don't know.
But how many Mr. Potato Forces do you know? If it's more than one, we have a problem. Shall we move on to the next question?
So, what is your favourite song?
Rick, you know me pretty well, and I think you know what my answer is going to be, so I want to know, what do you think I'm going to answer? We've had this discussion, and I've told you before. I'm curious if you remember.
So here's the thing. You're the only person that I talk to all the time that remembers pretty much all the conversations that we have.
Mildly autistic, got it.
Not even that. Like you even pointed out that you'd be able to point out when your mum had had the same conversation with you twice that day.
Yeah, but that's because it happens twice in a day. That's kind of a normal thing to memorize.
Yeah, but like normally when I bring something up, it's just something that enters my stream of consciousness, exits my mouth, and then it's probably going to be the same opinion as later, but I'm going to forget that I've ever said it.
Just take a random punt, because I'm curious if you can guess it.
The Garbage Man.
Oh, no dice.
Okay.
No, it's see my vest, made with real gorilla chest.
See this sweater, there's no better than authentic Irish setter. See this hat, 'twas my cat, my evening wear, vampire bat. These my slippers are albino, African, endangered rhino, grizzly bear underwear. Turtles' necks, I've got my sherberet of poodle on my noodle, it shall rest. Try these red robin sweet seconds, one or two. See my vest, see my vest, see my vest.
See my loafers, former gophers.
It was that, or skin my chauffeurs, but a greyhound for tuxedo would be best. So let's prepare these dogs.
Kill two for matching clogs.
See my vest, see my vest. Oh, please, won't you see my vest?
I really like the vest.
I gathered, yeah.
Sorry about the musical interlude, but fucking hell, I love that song. It's so good because it's so evil.
Yeah. Yeah, it's comically evil. Back when Mr. Burns could just be comically evil. The epitome of Mr. Burns being comically evil in early seasons before Disney bought Star Wars was just an opening shot of Mr. Burns in his office with the Imperial March playing.
Yeah, and he spins around in his chair like he's Vader just after getting his helmet on.
Yeah.
Don't forget, guys, there was a point in time where Mr. Burns, in order to increase the sales of nuclear energy, blotted out the sun.
Yeah.
That happened.
That was the plot of Who Shot Mr. Burns Part 1.
That is correct. I forgot that. That's why there was so many people who wanted to kill him.
Yeah.
I suppose I'll just throw the question back to you. What is your favourite song?
I would say my favourite song is probably the Stonecutters song.
We do.
We do. Yep.
The only thing I remember about that song is who keeps aliens at bay? We do. And it zooms in on an alien who's part of the Stonecutters just singing along.
We do.
It's like, who makes Phil Gutenberg a star? Or something like that, right?
Yep.
Early Simpsons had some bangers of songs, man.
Yeah. The fact that there are 2 OST albums that are good, and then the third one that I've never heard. I looked at the track list, and some of them were actual things that I do remember that were actually okay songs, but it was getting a bit thin by that point. But yeah, the first one album is fantastic. The second album is pretty good. But yeah, there's a lot of good stuff on there. Any good favourite song is valid. Like, I even brought up the Garbage Man song. That was actually a pretty good song as well. I think it was from the 200th episode or so.
I don't think it was that recent. But then again, that wasn't recent, 200th episode. That was ages ago. What am I on about? Fucking hell, time has no meaning.
Yeah. Yeah, it was back when I was still at school. Because I think the 300th episode is the one where Bart emancipates himself and moves in with Tony Hawk.
And there's that fucking really shit gag of Marge Simpson going, how many times has Homer been involved in something stupid? And Lisa clicks a clicker and just goes, 300, ma'am.
Who is your favourite voice actor?
I don't know them.
Okay.
I guess Hank Azaria. I think he does most of the cast, doesn't he?
Yeah, Hank Azaria. Now here's the thing. I think it would be remiss of me not to give Phil Hartman his due at this point, because the characters that he did were
iconic.
Not only iconic, but they weren't overused. They drove the plots of the episodes they were in, but they weren't every episode. They were like a couple of times every season.
Now I'm bummed out again. Can we end on a high note?
I said we weren't going to do it, but I will bring it back to the last ones. Do you have an MVP of The Simpsons?
I don't want to give it to Groening because he's probably personally responsible for running that shit into the ground. I can't blame him, it's for money, but you know, fuck him. Conan O'Brien.
Okay, yeah. One of the well-known writers of The Simpsons, more well-known for not writing The Simpsons.
He wrote some of the best episodes. Like, I personally know he wrote the monorail episode, and that's a top one.
Yeah, it absolutely is.
And I feel like the decline of The Simpsons probably started happening the moment he left the writing team, so I think that speaks volumes.
I think, actually, the moment the main writing team moved over to Futurama.
Yeah, possibly. That would have been like 2000. Well, just prior to.
Yeah. almost exactly 2000. So when your main talent moves from A to B, it leaves a void.
But yes, MVP, Rick, I suppose you have one?
My MVP is going to be Marge, because even in early seasons, she was holding the family together, and in later seasons, she's still holding the family together. Like, if it weren't for Marge, there are multiple episodes that show what happens when she leaves.
And also, fucking hell, God bless her voice actor, whose voice is probably permanently fucked nowadays.
Well, if you've made it this far, as always, you are our favourite people. If you want to give us a comment, constructive or otherwise, you always have the YouTube comments to fall back on, and if you're listening to us on one of our audio platforms, you can reach us at nonsensereviewuk@gmail.com. Once again, that is nonsensereviewuk@gmail.com. So, it's gonna be goodbye from me.
And it's a bye diddly eye from me, neighbourino.
Bye, everybody!